Imagine a world where receiving a parcel is as seamless as ordering a cup of coffee. How many of you have found yourselves having to wait around at home while you wait for a courier to deliver a parcel that you're expecting? Thank you. Now with smart parcel lockers and pickup points, this is no longer necessary. I'm about to tell you our behind-the-scenes story of how we've been able to build a local locker solution at about 20% of the cost to import a similar and arguably less suitable solution. My name is Andy Higgins, and I'm the MD of Bob Group. We're building a smart parcel locker network in South Africa called BobBox. Having studied electronic engineering, I have a technical background. However, I found myself moving more over to the dark side, getting more and more involved in the business over time. So I'm really grateful to have this opportunity to be here today and geek out with fellow techies. Okay, but before we get into that, I want to to give you a bit more context. I just want to share with you what we at Bob Group do. We're a technology company consisting of about 120 staff members in total, of which about 25 are technical roles. Our slogan is everything e-commerce. We focus on providing tools for e-commerce merchants in South Africa, offering 5 different services, which rather than microservices, I like to call macroservices. And this provides a set of tools for e-commerce merchants to run their businesses developed using our API-first approach. These services include Bob Shop, an online marketplace formed by the merger of, it was online marketplace started as Bid or Buy back in 1999 and subsequently merged with UAfrica, which focused on logistics to form, when we merged to form Bob Group in 2022. Bob Pay, online payments for e-commerce merchants. Bob Go, a courier aggregator, making it easy for e-commerce merchants to receive quotes for multiple couriers and to fulfill their orders while also providing a great experience to the users through regular branded tracking updates. Bob Box, a smart parcel locker solution, which I'm going to talk about today. And ShipLogic, our courier software as a service solution, which provides all the technology a courier needs to run their business, including an admin portal, a customer portal, as well as a driver app. The high-level tech stack that we use, that includes AWS cloud infrastructure hosted in Cape Town, Amazon Aurora Postgres database. We typically use a database cluster with a writer instance and multiple reader instances that can scale up based on demand. Lambdas coded in Golang. React on the front end with Tail CSS. And so, by the way, we are busy looking for a senior React developer, so if that could be you, please reach out to us. Bob Group's got to be the best place to work in the world for a developer. Okay, maybe I'm a bit biased, but anyway. Okay, that's my sales pitch done for the talk. And then we also use React Native for cross-platform app development as well. Just to give you some idea, our ShipLogic service in 2023, we handled 17.2 million shipments, 439 million tracking events, 9.5 million SWOT scans. Swatting involves weighing, measuring, and taking a photo of a parcel. And we processed almost 2 billion Rand in shipping turnover. So as you can see, we have some experience in building software at scale. BobBox, however, presented us with many new challenges, as I'm about to share with you now. Okay, our BobBox journey started in the second half of 2022. Logistics is arguably the most important aspect of the entire e-commerce value chain. We noticed an increasing trend of what the industry refers to as out-of-home deliveries, with a specific increase in smart parcel lockers, especially in Europe and Asia. For example, it is estimated that up to 80% of e-commerce deliveries in Poland are made to a parcel locker. This is now to the point where a popular term has been coined of slipper distance, meaning these service providers strive to provide a locker network where the density is so great that most of the population can retrieve their parcel by walking to it in their slippers. For out-of-home deliveries to work, it has to be a cheaper option than home delivery. Our service offering therefore starts at 50 Rand per shipment. One of the big advantages we have with this model is that we're able to consolidate parcels at both the point of collection and delivery. In other words, we collect and deliver multiple parcels from the same location, making it more cost-effective. To make this model financially viable, we however need to operate on a large scale. Considering the demise of the South African Post Office, we think this presents an even greater opportunity for Bobbox in South Africa. To get to a critical mass, we estimate we need a minimum of 1,000 lockers nationwide, doing a minimum of 100,000 shipments per month. And only then does it even start to get financially viable. One of the ways we hope to get there in the future is by providing a courier-agnostic network, by allowing multiple couriers to use the same network. In other words, we don't think it makes sense to have multiple couriers each have their own locker at the same location. In choosing to undertake this daunting task, we figured we needed to learn more from what is happening in other markets where lockers are successful. We enrolled the services of some expensive consultants based in Europe, and while they reiterated that the technology is absolutely critical in making a locker network successful, they strongly advised against us building our own tech when it's something that is available from many different local international suppliers. During this learning phase in October 2022, my colleague Kunal, who's sitting here in the front, and I, we went to a Post and Parcel Expo in Frankfurt, Germany, where there were many exhibitors selling locker solutions. We returned from that expo on our Lufthansa flight with an extra piece of luggage, a mini prototype locker. Here you can see us at Frankfurt Airport as we were trying to figure out how we were going to get this locker on the plane. Now, we could have imported a solution like our competitors in South Africa have done, but with South Africa being a net exporter of raw steel, it seems silly to export raw steel to China, have them bend and mold it into the shape you want, paint it, and then send it back to us here in South Africa. And of course, it's a lot more fun to build it yourself. So needless to say, we did not take the advice of our expensive consultants, and we embarked on a journey to build our own locals lacquer locker solution. It turns out there are many steel fabrication companies in South Africa with laser cutting capability, and they are able to build these type of lockers. I believe this is partly driven by our advanced capabilities as a country in the car motor manufacturing industry. We wanted to build a locker itself, the locker itself to be as dumb as possible. But much like two of my favorite sayings, sorry I wrote such a long letter, but I didn't have time to write a shorter one, and simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, it can be a challenge to build something simple. So we set out to build a locker where courier drivers can deposit parcels. We send a PIN to the intended recipient by SMS. The receiver goes to the locker, enters the PIN, the relevant door opens, they collect their parcel. Sounds simple, right? Not so fast. But before we get there, I first want to show you one of our completed lockers. Meet Basil. Here you can see our standard locker with 19 compartments. It consists of 3 different sizes, small, medium, and large. There's a keypad just below the name, and there's a maintenance access down the middle. One of these lockers weighs about 250 kilograms. Like you, your first thought might be that this looks like a great application for a Raspberry Pi. And you would be right, except for one major consideration, and that is power consumption. Notwithstanding our load shedding problems as a country, which will hopefully get fixed at some point, and while we may never realize slipper distance in South Africa, but maybe we could get to bicycle distance or sneaker distance, we wanted to build a locker that is as simple, versatile, and as cost-effective as possible. We literally want to be able to take one of these lockers and drop it off at some remote location, hopefully secure, and it just works straight out of the box without any need for external power or for a direct internet connection. This early decision to focus on building a battery-powered locker formed the foundation of our solution and continues to have a material impact on all our design decisions moving forward. Power is measured in watts and is simply voltage multiplied by current in amps. A Raspberry Pi typically operates off 5 volts and can draw over 1 amp of current, whereas an ESP32 microcontroller operates off a lower voltage of around 3.2 volts and typically draws milliamps or even microamps when in deep sleep mode. As you can see, there's a vast difference in power usage between a Raspberry Pi and an ESP32. So we are using an ESP32 microcontroller to control the locker firmware, with firmware coded in C++. This 2.3 gram ESP32 has more than sufficient processing power for our needs. We even reduced the frequency of the CPU from 240 megahertz to 80 megahertz in order to conserve power. Talking about power management, the electronics still need to be powered by a battery. We opted to build a battery pack using lithium chloride batteries, 2 3.6 volt D-cell batteries in series with another 2 in parallel gives us a 7.2 volt battery pack that has the energy equivalent of about half of a typical car battery. Why not use a rechargeable lithium battery, you may ask? These lithium chloride batteries are especially well suited for IoT type applications by having a low self-discharge rate, less than 2% per year, a very high power density. We currently estimate the battery will last for 3 years, and we're hoping to extend this to at least 5 years. They are less useful than more general purpose batteries, so hopefully less susceptible to potential theft. They're not rechargeable, but they can be recycled, with some research reports we've seen indicating that these batteries are even more environmentally friendly than rechargeables. The next important consideration for us is communication between the locker and the cloud. Our original thought was for the end user's mobile device to connect to the locker using Bluetooth and to piggyback on top of the end user's mobile data connection. This is sometimes referred to as a parasitic connection. So we're behaving like a parasite on the user's device, much the same way as Apple AirTags work, except they form a parasitic connection via phones passing by without even telling the owner of the phone. We, however, soon realized that in order to provide the experience we want, a parasitic connection was not going to work, and the locker would need its own data connection. We started out with a narrowband communication protocol called Sigfox, but ran into issues. Firstly, signal issues. When a locker was placed deep within a shopping mall, for example, the signal could be patchy. We tried using external antennas and installing repeaters, but this proved challenging and added complexity, which we did not want. The other big drawback with Sigfox was it basically does not allow for two-way communication. Also, each message could only be a maximum of 12 bytes, which we found very limiting. We ended up going with another narrowband solution called NB-IoT, specifically designed for the Internet of Things. This runs off the cellular network and generally has better coverage where people are, including deep inside shopping malls. We also opted to use MQTT for the messaging layer. NB-IoT has opened up the opportunity for us to develop additional features, such as locker-to-locker shipments, which requires two-way communication, over-the-air firmware updates, transmission of log files over the air, before we had to physically go to the locker and plug in a cable to download the logs. Our NB-IoT solution with Vodacom is locally with Vodacom, although we are using a global Vodafone solution, which allows for global roaming, including MTN, once it becomes available in South Africa. This means we actually connect to a server in Europe. We connect via a private APN, accessing the Vodafone IoT platform over a VPN. Using all these acronyms makes me feel really good. It feels like I'm really in the tech world today, right? So, so while I'm talking about acronyms, going back to our power consumption, because that's always our first and foremost consideration, MBIoT has a useful capability called EDRX. What this does is it allows electronics to go into a deep sleep mode and regularly wake up ever so slightly to check if there are any messages pending. Think of it this way: if I'm the NB-IoT module in deep sleep mode. Are there any messages for me? No. Okay, I'm going back to sleep. As opposed to, are there any messages for me? Yes. Okay, I need to do something. So this is very important for us to be able to provide a good service and to make sure that we're able to check messages regularly. And next, I want to talk about the keypad. Here you can see an early version of our first locker, Adam. When we started out, we thought it was important to have a display to give interactive instructions to the user when using the locker. Taking our power constraints into consideration, we opted for an e-ink paper display, similar to that used on a Kindle screen. We, however, found this to be quite fragile, and when observing user behavior, they often did not even look at the screen when they were entering in their PIN. What we did instead was, together with our supplier in China, was we developed our own RGB keypad, so we could give some feedback to the user based on the color of the keypad backlight. We also played around with some sound patterns to give the user, to alert the user, for example, when we want them to perform an action like close or lock a door. So we took the plunge and we removed the screen and we added this instructions as a sticker. Following is a video that demonstrates the behavior of the keypad with different backlight colors. Take note of the flashing and beeping instruction there, which means close the door until you hear a click. Boom. Okay. Next, we have the locks for the locker compartments. A low voltage pulse is used to trigger the lock to open. Our battery pack has enough power to trigger over 100,000 lock opens. Actually, I did this talk internally for our staff yesterday, and one of the engineers piped up and said, that's not true. We can actually do millions of locks opens with just one battery pack. So let me rephrase that. Our battery pack has enough power to trigger millions of lock opens. We import these locks from a supplier in China, and they cost around about 300 Rand a piece. We also developed a lock driver board, which basically consists of some relays that drive the opening of the actual locks. Here we implemented an RJ45 connection, where you can see there's actually two on this for us to be able to daisy chain them. And it also then allows you to use a standard network cable to connect the main board to the lock driver board. This makes it a lot easier for installation and maintenance. Finally, bringing all of this together, we have the PCB, or printed circuit board, which we refer to as our main board. We designed this board locally, but currently have it printed in China and sent to us. The turnaround time for a new design is around about 2 weeks. In future, we hope to have our boards printed locally in South Africa as well. The white component at the bottom there is the ESP32. The large blue capacitor was used to replace the coin cell battery we originally had to power the real-time clock. You can see the RJ45 connection there on the bottom left. That's for the lock driver board. There's a slot for an SD card. And there's connection points for the battery, keypad, USB-C programming, and NB-IoT module. It would have been so much easier to simply use a Raspberry Pi to build this using a programming language of our choice. However, we are happy with the path we have taken, and we're optimistic that this approach is going to pay dividends for us in the future. In closing, I'd like to share with you some of the other lessons we learned throughout our journey. First of all, it takes much longer to iterate when hardware is involved. Historically, we have been accustomed to working on pure software projects. Adding firmware and hardware to the mix definitely complicates and prolongs the development process. Everything is harder. Take, for example, compressing a log file and uploading it to the cloud. Something that might normally take a few lines of code with a higher level programming language can end up taking days to get right with a microcontroller, figuring out memory fragmentation issues, and having to split the file into smaller chunks to transmit it, and then to piece the file back together on the other side. We added a dedicated real-time clock to the main board. The clock on the ESP turned out not to be as accurate as we needed and often experienced drift. This allows for us to have a more accurate timestamps for logs, for example. Bluetooth communication for the driver app presented some challenges. Android devices have BLE package size and speed limitations. Different manufacturers also seem to implement BLE differently. We added an SD card for storage. This is to be able to better manage logs and OTAs, and to possibly provide space for storage of images in the future, for photos, for example. We increased the onboard memory of the ESP to deal with compression and fragmentation issues. I already mentioned the removal of the screen and replacing it with the RGB keypad. We are confident that this was the right decision to make. What we also changed was the ability to have a primary and secondary locker at the same location. Users would get confused when we had two lockers side by side, each with their own keypad. It's also cheaper for us to deploy a primary and a secondary at a single location rather than two primaries. Here we have Lilo and Stitch next to each other, as you can see under their names, each with their own keypad. Now see if you can spot the difference. Here we have Lilo with just the one keypad with no keypad on the locker to the right. So unfortunately, we had to separate Lilo and Stitch, but we gained the ability to add a secondary locker to an existing primary locker when additional capacity is required. We learned to first check the signal at a proposed location before placing a locker there. To do this, one of our engineers, Billy, as seen here, he built a signal tester. We're still working on improving this to make it look less like a bomb so we can travel more freely with it. We ran into temperature issues inside the locker. We are less concerned about the effect of high temperatures on the electronics and more concerned about the parcel contents. As you can see, you would not be a happy customer if you're receiving this chocolate with maximum temperatures reaching up to 50 degrees centigrade due to the locker being facing the brunt of the early morning sun. So one of the things we're experimenting with is different colors, like this white locker here. This is an attempt to try and bring down the temperature. Initial tests showed us that on average we're able to bring down the temperature by at least 10 degrees centigrade by just changing the locker. And then we're also focusing on being more pedantic about where we place these lockers. Access to shopping malls for maintenance can be a challenge. You can't always gain access when you need to fix something. And then user education continues to be a big struggle. We continue to be surprised how some users struggle to use what we are trying to make super, super simple. True story. An actual user placed a sign on a locker after being scammed by someone when they thought it was an actual ATM. A door fell off a locker and injured one of our staff members. This was definitely a lowlight for us in the project and made us more aware of our responsibility to ensure that we build a safe product. Putting all of this together, I know you can't see the detail there, but here's a diagram showing the complete process flow of a buyer going through the checkout on a e-commerce website, getting delivery options with rates, the merchant receiving the order, booking the shipment, a locker reservation taking place, and the driver delivering the parcel to a locker and the buyer collecting it. Looking at this, we continue to be amazed at how many touch points there are to ensure what on the surface seems like a simple process to enable a buyer to collect their parcel from a locker. So we're still very early in our BobBox journey. Currently, we have 45 lockers deployed in the wild with a target to reach 150 lockers by the end of this year. We have hubs in Gauteng, Cape Town, and Durban. As mentioned, we need to get to at least 1,000 lockers nationwide or even more. Our expensive consultants told us this number for South Africa ultimately needs to be 5,000 to 10,000 lockers. That's one locker per 6,000 population. Either way, we know based on Metcalfe's law, which states that the value of a network is directly proportional to the square of the points within the network, that as we add more and more locker locations, the value of our network is going to increase in value exponentially. Here you can see a locker map for Gauteng. We still have a long way to go, but it's very gratifying to see it starting to fill up. So what's next for BobBox? We're going to continue to refine and improve our technology. We are actually still trying to get EDRX to work as expected. Improve power consumption further through more detailed power profiling. We want to make it easier to deploy new lockers by enhancing what we call our birthing app. We still want to implement locker-to-locker functionality. We are busy building a BobBox consumer app and more locker locations, many more lockers. We need to build this network for it to be successful. So I sincerely hope that one day you'll get to experience using a BobBox locker yourself and that you'll have a pleasant experience. At least now when you do, hopefully you'll have a much greater appreciation for what goes on behind the scenes to make it all happen. Thank you. I'm going to open up for questions for those of you who want to ask, and perhaps even more importantly, if any of you have any advice for us, because we're still learning along this journey, please come and tell us if you think there's something that we can do better. And if you don't want to wait for a locker to appear for you as a pleasant surprise when you're checking out on an e-commerce website one day, you're welcome to go to our merch store, which normally is only for our staff, but you can go to merch.bob.co.za and you can buy a Bob Shop t-shirt. If you enter in the coupon code BobMerch, you'll get the t-shirt. You just got to enter in your location. You'll get the t-shirt for R5 for the shirt and R5 for delivery to the nearest BobBox. Bearing in mind there are limited locations at the moment. But please feel free to go ahead and do that. Okay, are there any questions? Yes, there's one there. Oh, thank you. I see there were some hands. That's a relief. Okay. Oh, cool. Lots of questions. Yes, please.
So I have the mic. So I have 3 questions, actually.
Cool.
Firstly, I see that you have a connection to the NB IoT device. Is it a separate module or is it on the board?
It's a separate module that plugs into the board. So let's just go back to that, to the main board. Okay. So you can see there, down the bottom left, there's a connection, and it's actually a separate module. You have the option of having the SIM card soldered straight onto it. To start with, we're just using the plastic SIM that can slot into it, but it is a separate module that plugs in there.
Okay. And then follow up on that. Since ESP is bringing out ESP Walter, which has that built in, are you guys doing an upgrade path for that?
So I'm not super involved in that detailed technical part, so okay, I'm going to make a note of that, and I can get back to you, or just tell our devs to make sure the engineers that they've looked into that. But we've already upgraded the ESP a few times. We started with sort of the most basic bare bones, and we realized we actually need things like more memory, and then adding the storage helped us in some cases as well. But we haven't looked at that as far as I'm aware. They could have. I'm definitely going to ask them when I get back to the office if they have. So thank you for that. Okay,
and then my last question, sorry. On that breakout board you have for the lockers, on the ESP, are you using the Espressif SDKs, or did you build your own own software for that?
I believe we built our own Cornell. So we haven't used any of those SDKs. I think when we started out, if I remember, it's going back now, 2022, we tried to take some shortcuts and we just ran into too many issues. And so we ended up like sort of building natively ourselves from scratch. But if you're interested in that detail, I can definitely give you the right person to speak to. I'm sure he would love to have those sort of discussions with you. So I don't have that information at my fingertips, but that's from my recollection, that's what happened, yeah.
Okay. Awesome, thanks.
So, yes, there's a question here, and there's one here.
I have a question with regards to the doors of the locks. So let's say a customer finds a melted chocolate and decides to leave the door open. How do you deal with that situation?
Yeah, so good question. The short answer is it doesn't matter, actually. We ideally don't want the doors to be left open because they can be a little bit of a hazard. When the driver comes, generally they get serviced at least on a daily basis by the driver. The driver will just, if doors are left open, they'll close it. But that is also part of the reason why we trying to use that's the keypad with the sound, with the sound patterns to try and get the user to close it themselves. But what I wanted to show you here is we actually know if a door is open. We can tell the state of a door on our sort of back end. So we can actually see, you can even get a visual representation like you can see here, and you can see the door was left open. So obviously we're not physically there, so we can't go and close the door, but we at least can be made aware that a door is open. We also get sent a notification if a door is opened in an unauthorized way. So we at least get notified. We might not be able to do anything about it, but at least when the driver services the locker next, they will close the door. It's more just a safety, and we don't want people to go and put junk inside the locker, if the door's left open.
Just a question on my side. If we want to use you in our online shop as an example, as a shipping option, do you have API capability to integrate with us so we can even view milestones of where the parcel is on our platform instead of using your dashboard?
We wouldn't be a tech company if we didn't offer an API, right? So, absolutely. But what platform do you use for your shopping store?
Shopify.
Shopify. So we actually make it super easy because not everyone are devs. So we have an app in the Shopify App Store. You can just go and install the Shopify app, and you don't have to do any coding. So there's no direct API access actually needed. And yes, full tracking updates, full service from end-to-end solution. You even get quotes from multiple couriers. Makes it super easy. I would suggest you have a look at our Bob Go solution for that.
Cool. Mine's probably less of a technical question, but just more of a curious one. Have you encountered vandalism, and have you had to take steps to sort of counter vandal?
Touch wood with wood, not yet. But it is security, obviously being in South Africa is one of the first and foremost concerns that we have. I think the key there is about placement, like where we put them. So for example, we've put one outside the residential estate where I live. It's this one here. Joshua, it's named after my son. And that's actually just up against the wall. You can see no external power. But what you can't see there is there's a security house a few meters actually away from that. So where possible in shopping malls, forecourts of petrol stations, residential estates, corporate parks, our key is to rather piggyback on top of the existing security that is already in place, ideally. But these weigh 250 kgs. We've tried to carry them. It takes like 8 people to carry one of these things, just by the way. I know in Europe, they tend to get problems with things like graffiti and that as well. So it is a challenge, and obviously being in South Africa, it's first and foremost on our minds. And we know that, for example, during the KZN riots, there were issues with lockers, not ours, fortunately. We didn't have any in place yet, but due to events like that, it is something that does keep us awake at night. But if anyone's got any sort of silver bullets to solve that one, I don't think there are. I would love to hear them. So, make them heavier. Yes, put lead in them. Oh, that is a problem as well. Yeah, so the other thing we have looked at is bolting them to the ground as well, just making it difficult. But yeah, as that stands, you could just lift that up well, you can't just lift it up because it's 250 kgs, but hopefully, yeah, with 24-hour security, that's less likely to happen. Yes, there's a question over there.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, in terms of financial, how did it make sense to manufacture locally and to do the steelworks and design your own custom hardware? Did you realize that it was more expensive, or did it actually work out to be cheaper?
It definitely worked out cheaper, but I think, can I grab that? I think my colleague here will be able to answer that one better because he was involved in the design process. So maybe I'll ask him to answer that one. So if you don't mind, so to throw you under the bus. Sorry. The design process from a cost point of view was it cheaper, yeah, versus the importing, yeah. Can we have the guest mic on, please?
Hello, there we go. Okay, yeah, so that was a process. So firstly, we looked at all the different suppliers in Europe and especially in Ukraine and Romania and so on. Those guys are really good at tech as well. But we quickly realized that when we did our sums that it will work out probably around 20% of the cost, or, well, it depends on the manufacturer. And I think one of the largest costs was obviously the steel, as Andy mentioned. But then we also realized a lot of them haven't refined their tech on the level that they advertise at the expo themselves. So we quickly realized it won't just be a cost thing. We'll definitely have to build on top of their tech. And that was probably mostly the ultimate decision to go ourselves. With regards to the design of the locker, Andy looked quite wide and far in South Africa, visited a lot of different, some dodgy, some less dodgy steel manufacturers. And the one we ended up finding really helped us with the design. They helped us with the hinges. They helped us with the security of the doors. And as your question about theft, we decided, let's make it as secure as we can right now. And the day that vandalism happens, we'll probably reconsider the design. But for now, the design is pretty simple.
But it was no question. We got quotes from international suppliers, and a big part of that also is the freight, right? Because these things are big, heavy things to import. And we actually imported 2 lockers, one from Turkey and one from China. And that also the time to do that, it takes months. But on a pure cost basis, there was no doubt it worked out at about 20% of the cost. So there's no question it's cheaper for us to do it ourselves. Much harder, lots of potholes on the way, but we're comfortable with that decision. I don't know, maybe you ask us in a few years' time, maybe we'll change that.
I guess something we never take into account if we think of the cost of a locker is the cost of all the engineers that we put into the design of the locker. But they're for free, but locker per locker is about 20%.
Yeah, so if we're going to do this on scale where we want to get to 10,000 lockers, I guess only then are we going to really reap the benefits of it. But sure, if we're going to stay on a relatively low number, it would have made much more sense just to import them, right? It would have been a lot easier as well. Yeah, any more questions? Oh, okay, yes. Oh, there's 2 there as well. We got time? Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
So you mentioned that you also creating something on the consumer side. What was that?
So on the
On
what?
the consumer side.
Or consumer side, yes. So it's quite interesting. A lot of, other than our Bob Shop service, our services have been more sort of business services, right? So we want to make it, again, this is all about scale. And so we want to make it, and with the opportunity with the post office, we want to make it that our mothers can use this, and it's as simple as to do that. They want to send you a gift or something like that from one town to another, that they can possibly not even use the app, although the app is where we are entering the consumer side. So we are building, using React Native, we're building a consumer app. We're trying to make it as simple as possible so that someone can just go onto the app, possibly not even the app. We still want to even do a really dumbed down web page where it's super simple, easy to say, hard to do, based on, from my 2 sayings. And so to get to that critical mass, we think it is important to open it up to consumers as well. So yes, we're not there yet, but we definitely plan to provide the service to consumers. Yes.
Got the mic already.
Yes, great.
Just to drag you back to the dark side, so that you got quite a competitive landscape. Are you hoping to use that aggregation to kind of usurp all of those guys, eventually make it not viable for Courier Guy, Pudo to actually run a service?
Yeah, well, Courier Guy is one of our customers. So we actually provide the Courier Guy with ShipLogic powers the Courier Guy out of interest. So so we quite familiar with this service, and they do have a separate locker solution which is not using our tech. My secret desire, please don't tell anyone of this, would be for them to use our tech, because we believe it's far superior than the tech they're using. So ultimately, we want to build a network. We want to be sort of the railways, right? And let other people come bring their trains and use that network. And we think that makes the most sense, right? That's how the fiber operators, that's how they work, right? You don't have each fiber operator putting a connection into each house. I think it's a similar thing for us. So our ultimate long-term wish would be that we provide this one sort of network for all couriers to tap into. But yes, there are other competitors at the moment, and it will obviously be up to them for their business to make that decision, whether they want to go on top. What we do know for sure, though, it doesn't make sense for every courier in this country to go and put their own locker, create their own locker network. Yeah.
Hi, so I want to know that whether the containers are like by design they are waterproof and like fireproof. Are they?
We haven't tried the fireproof one. But waterproof, excuse me, you can see here, these are specifically designed for the water to run off.
Okay.
And so far, that one is, as you can see, is outside, and we haven't had an issue with water going in. Mm-hmm. We haven't had a fire yet. Maybe that's still, yeah. So.
And how you ensure that the courier guy is putting the stuff in the locker? Because he can just open the door and just close it, right?
Oh, the driver?
Yeah.
Okay, so you said the courier guy, it's not...
He's not the courier guy. Okay.
The courier guy isn't using our lockers quite at the moment, but for the driver, yes. So we have a driver app, and what happens is, actually, Cornell should be explaining this, he built it. Basically, it connects via Bluetooth, correct me if I'm wrong, and the driver comes up, he scans the parcel, scans the label on the parcel, the button comes up, a modal comes up, he presses the button and the door opens. He puts it in and he closes it. Your question is, what if he opens the door, doesn't put it in, but just closes it? Yes. So what do we do there? No, so obviously there has to be some level of trust with our drivers.
Okay.
I mean...
It's a trusted partner kind of thing.
Yeah, so I mean, the same thing happens. The driver can go and collect a parcel from a physical location and put it in his bakkie, but never take it to the depot, right? So we have tracking of all these events. So we'll have the last scanning event was that the driver supposedly put it in the locker, and then the customer went, so that's on delivery. The customer then comes, opens the locker and says there was nothing there.
Yeah, that's also true.
I mean, so the last paper trail, audit trail that we have is of the driver putting it in the locker. And obviously, if it happens once, maybe there's something weird happened. If it happens twice, maybe that's not a coincidence, right? So we haven't, so far our drivers have been very trustworthy, fortunately. Yeah.
And that makes sense. And if you're installing outside, have you thought of using solar panel on the roof to not to struggle with the power so much?
I'll tell you that now. Sorry, I just thought of two better answers to your previous question, though.
Okay.
One is we are planning potentially to put in parcel detection inside the locker, was the one thing. And what we may do in the future is also have a camera. So there'll be other information to be able to detect when there's dishonest behavior. With regards to the solar panel, yeah, that's a great suggestion. And for now, we're focused on trying to do the simple solution, bare bones, that we can get it out there. There are some bells and whistles, lots of bells and whistles we'd like to add, potentially in the future, and a solar panel would potentially be one of those. It'll probably be optional. Also, obviously, there are additional theft issues that will come along with that. But when we do want to add more bells and whistles, it's always about the power, right? So a solar panel could be a solution for that, and it is one of the things we talk about fairly often.
Cool, thanks.
Pleasure. Okay, I think we are over time, or no, we're probably on time. Is there any more questions, or shall we close it off there? Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day.